Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC EduSet live lecture. Dear friends, as you know that since our previous two lectures we have been talking about 100 years of Indian cinema. We learnt about the various perspectives, the various eras which were prevalent in the Indian industry, that is the cinema industry, and in previous session we talked about till Raj Kapoor era. And dear friends, today also we are going to talk on this very topic, that is on 100 years of Indian cinema, but today we are going to talk forward from Raj Kapoor Sahab era. Dear friends, for this we have again with us in our studios Dr. Manoj Sharma. Dr. Manoj Sharma, as you know, that is Assistant Professor in the Department of History, Kirodi Mal College, University of Delhi. So dear friends, I believe that this lecture, this whole series is going to be very interesting. So dear friends, let's take advantages from our experts' experiences and let's try to understand more about the 100 years of Indian cinema. So first of all, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Manoj Sharma. Dr. Sharma, welcome to the EduSet lecture.
Very good morning to all the viewers. In the earlier two discussions on 100 years of Indian cinema, we discussed that how the cinema originated in India, and thereafter how silent films they were being made, and thereafter how the era of talkies began in 1931, in which various genres of films they were being made. After that, we also discussed in 1940s how three important films or three milestones in the Indian cinema they were being made: Chetan Anand's Nicha Nagar, then Dharti Ke Lal by K. Abbas, and Kalpana by Uday Shankar. After that, what we see is that a number of films which were made by Raj Kapoor, starting with Barsat and then Awara, Shri 420 in 1950s. So during that particular period, what we see is that India became independent in 1947, and there were a lot of hopes and aspirations that the freedom will serve as some sort of panacea, and in that way people will be able to get rid of all the problems which are there in the society because of the colonial rule. So a number of films which were made in 1950s, they were full of hope, they were full of aspirations, what the Indians they wanted to achieve. And many of those aspirations they could not be fulfilled immediately because all the solutions were long term in nature. India had a lot of poverty, India had a lot of economic backwardness, we were declining, there was a lot of decline in terms of agriculture, people were not able to be fed because the food grain production was very less, there were no industrial development earlier because of the colonial rule. And in that context, the films which were made in 1950s, they had a lot of hope. And Dilip Kumar, who acted in two important films of this period, 1957, Dilip Kumar's film Naya Daur and Paigam. Both these two important films of Dilip Kumar. In Naya Daur, there was some kind of a debate regarding whether we should go for some kind of mechanization or we should follow the traditional means which we have. The story was narrated in such a way that the debate ranged around this. And the idea of Nehruvian socialism, the kind of socialism which was propagated by Jawaharlal Nehru, that was also debated in both these films. Another film called Paigam, in which Dilip Kumar acted, was also talking about this kind of aspect, and it was giving some sort of a message to the masses. And Dilip Kumar also became some sort of a hero who was bringing the message of Nehruvian socialism to the masses. After that, what we see is that during this particular period, a number of music directors, they were also very popular. For example, Naushad was an important music director. The importance of songs to films is also very important within the context of Indian cinema. We see that how songs they play an important role. Naushad was also awarded the Dada Saheb Phalke Award. A number of films in which he gave music, some important are Ratan, Mela, Andaz, Almol Ghadi, Baiju Bawra, Mughal Azam and Pakiza. So these were some of the films which became popular because of the kind of music which was being there in that in this kind of cinema. What we also see during this particular period is that music, which was an integral aspect of this particular period, because as we see, not only at that particular point of time, but even later, even now we see that 5 to 6 songs they are in the films generally. And in many of the films during that particular period, for example, I remember a film called Indra Sabha, which had around 72 songs. So songs, they played an important role in the popularization of films, as we all know that for different festivals we have different kinds of songs, and songs play an important role in our lives also. So from that perspective, songs also played an important role in the cinema. And in the context of Naushad, we say that the kind of music which he gave, the kind of the music which became popular in 1940s and 50s, Naushad played an important role in the popularization. He was also classically trained in the context that many of the songs which were composed by him, they were based on traditional and classical rags and raginis. So this is what the contribution of Naushad was to the Indian cinema. Two films, Vaiju Vavra and Mughal-e-Azam, they became quite popular because of the kind of songs which were there in the film. And later on, Pakiza, in which Meena Kumari played the central protagonist, was also, the music was also very melodious. To some of the important singers during this particular period, one was Mohammed Rafi. Earlier than Mohammed Rafi, we had K.L. Sehgal also, who became quite popular in 1930s and 40s. But the style of K.L. Sehgal's singing was later changed with the coming of Mohammed Rafi, Mukesh, Lata and Asha Bhosle and Kishore Kumar, and all these singers, they became quite popular as playback singers. So Mohammed Rafi was quite a versatile singer, and the number of songs which he sang, they were numerous, and from patriotic songs to highly romantic songs, and to qawwalis, to ghazals, and also bhajans. All these kind of songs were sung by Mohammed Rafi, and the kind of molding which he did in terms of the actors who were enacting on the screen. So he molded his voice in such a manner that it appeared that the actor who was lip syncing was really singing the song. And some of the songs from the films like Vaiju Vavra, O Duniya Ke Rakhwale and Man Tadpat Hari Darshan Ko Aaj are considered to be the classics which were sung by Mohammed Rafi. So from that perspective, Rafi was an important singer who became quite popular during this particular period. Apart from Rafi, we also see that Mukesh also became quite popular. Mukesh is considered to be the voice of famous Raj Kapoor. Raj Kapoor, almost many of the songs which were quite popular, which were sung on screen by Raj Kapoor, they had voice of Mukesh. And when Mukesh died, Raj Kapoor claimed that I have lost my voice. And it was quite a statement in the context that the people, those who saw Raj Kapoor singing on the screen, they identified Raj Kapoor's voice with the voice of Mukesh. So he played, and he was a singer who had a very steady voice. Initially he was trying to copy K.L. Sehgal, and one of his earlier songs, Dil Jalta Hai To Jalne De, when K.L. Sehgal heard the song, he said, because the song was sung in his style, so he said, I don't even remember when I sung this song. So later on he changed his style, and the songs which are sung by him, they were quite steady, they were quite melodious, and they had some kind of melancholy which was attached. So Mukesh, when he sang a song of the film Rajnikant, Kai Baar Yun Hi Dekha Hai, and which won him the National Film Award for the best male playback singer. And his voice was also very soulful in the context that Mukesh played an important role in the films which were made by Raj Kapoor, and in many of the films of Raj Kapoor, Mukesh was the voice on which Raj Kapoor depended. Apart from Mukesh, we had another important singer called Kishore Kumar. Kishore Kumar was a very versatile singer, and he used a lot of yodeling in his singing style, though he was not trained as a singer, but he became quite popular in 60s and 70s. Initially he started as an actor also in some of the films Kishore Kumar acted as a hero, as a lead actor. For example, Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi, Half Ticket, they were some of the films in which Kishore Kumar acted as a lead hero. Ek Raaz, Naukri, these are some of the films in which Kishore Kumar acted as a main lead. Apart from that, he was a very good playback singer. He was nominated for a number of times for the Filmfare Awards, and he was able to receive a number of Filmfare Awards as well. Apart from that, the kind of singing style which Kishore Kumar had, which had a lot of yodeling, a lot of improvisation in his singing, though he was not all that classically trained. And many of the songs which were sung by Kishore Kumar, they became quite popular. They were filmed on many film stars like Rajesh Khanna and Amitabh Bachchan, and many of the songs which are sung by him are still remembered by the masses. And what we see, another important heroine during this particular period was Madhubala, who was known as Mumtaz Jahan. She also acted in a number of films during this particular period. For example, Mahal, which was made in 1949 with Ashok Kumar, which had a very haunting kind of music. Mr. and Mrs. 55 with Guru Dutt in 1955. Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi, which was made in 1958. Mughal-e-Azam, in which she played the role of Anarkali in 1960, and Barsat Ki Raat in 1960. Madhubala was known not only for her acting skills, but she was also quite beautiful, and she was known as the Greta Garbo of India for her elegance, for her acting style. Her career was not all that long because she died young, but what we see is that the kind of cinema which we did, the kind of popularity which she attained during this particular period was quite immense. And even now, many of the heroines, they are being compared to Madhubala, that how they are trying to copy Madhubala or how they look Madhubala in that context. So this was an important chapter in the Indian cinema. Another important film personality who was associated with cinema was Dharmendra, and Dharmendra became quite popular. He was selected through a show in which he was to be selected for acting, and when later he joined the cinema, he became some sort of a he-man of the Indian cinema. And Dharmendra was quite popular in 1960s and early 70s, and many of the films which he did, it is being suggested that he was offered to play any role in Sholay. Initially he was the main lead, and he was asked to pick any of the roles which he wanted to do. And Amitabh Bachchan, who had not yet established during that particular period, he was being cast in the role of Jay later by Ramesh Sippy, who directed the film on the insistence of Salim and Javed, who recommended his name. So this is what we see, that Dharmendra was a very established hero in 1960s and 70s, and the kind of films which he did during this particular period, for example, Bandini, Satyakam, Chupke Chupke, Sholay, Yadon Ki Barat, Shalimar. In many of the films, the kind of roles which he essayed, they were quite different, and the kind of acting skills which he had, apart from the innocent looks and the appeal which led to his popularity, which made him quite popular in the cinema, and the kind of cinema which he did was also quite liked by the masses. Apart from Dharmendra, some other important heroes during late 1960s and 70s, one was Rajesh Khanna, who became the superstar, and the kind of mannerisms which Rajesh Khanna had, the kind of hit songs Rajesh Khanna generated on the screen with Kishore Kumar, and the kind of romantic image which Rajesh Khanna had, and his pairing with Sharmila Tagore and Mumtaz, they were also quite important. So what we see is that Rajesh Khanna became quite popular in 1970s until early 80s, and that phase is considered to be the phase in which a lot of romantic films they were being made during this particular period. And many of the films in which Rajesh Khanna played an important role or lead role, they became quite blockbusters. They were able to achieve the silver jubilee. Apart from this, what we see is that Rajesh Khanna also paired with Hrishikesh Mukherjee, a film called Anand with the theme of death, and it also says that life is to be lived. And Bawarchi, which was made also by Hrishikesh Mukherjee, which was talking about harmony in the family. There was another film called Hathi Mere Sathi, which was showing the man-animal relation. It was directed by M.A. Thirumugham, and the screenplay was by Salim and Javed. So what we see is that during this particular period, the kind of films which were made by Hrishikesh Mukherjee, for example Anand and Bawarchi, in which Rajesh Khanna played the central character, and in Anand the supporting character was played by Amitabh Bachchan. All these films they became quite popular during that particular period as well. And Hathi Mere Sathi was a blockbuster at that point of time. It was a film which became popular in 1971, in which Tanuja played the leading lady. And this had screenplay by Salim Javed, who later became the most significant or the most important pair in the context of script writing in Indian cinema. And they gave some kind of recognition to the script writing which was earlier missing. This kind of platform for the script writers in the Indian cinema was being given by Salim Javed, and they wrote a number of successful films together, and their films which were wrote together were quite blockbusters during this particular period. Another important personality during this particular period who became quite popular and who is popular even now is Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan's dialogue delivery is quite impressive, not only at that point of time but even now, and the kind of angry young man image which he generated during that particular period also became important. As you can see on the screen as well, anti-establishment, hero of the masses, brooding image which is seen, and the comic timing which Amitabh Bachchan had during this particular period was very, very important. At the same time, what we see is that the kind of personality which Amitabh had. For example, when you see the films which are done by Amitabh Bachchan in 1970s, he was not only the hero of the masses in the context that he only had angry young man image. The films which he did, for example Diwar, Zanjeer, all these kind of cinema which was done by him, Suhag, Amar Akbar Anthony, Naseeb, all these films Amitabh was playing a character in which that anti-establishment kind of image was there. But at the same time a lot of comic timing was also there in him, and to do a comedy is a very difficult task in terms of acting. Those who are into acting, they say that to achieve a comic timing is a much more difficult task than any other of kind of acting. So Amitabh Bachchan was well versed in all the crafts which he had and the kind of personality which he had, and till 19 he is able to sustain in the Indian cinema from 1970s till now, and the kind of cinema which he had done over the period is also quite important. If you see the kind of films which he did, Zanjeer was a film which established him in the film industry. Sholay was a cult film in the sense that all the characters of Sholay, they are remembered even now. It was a long film and it was not appreciated when it was released initially, but over a period of time with the advertising, with the kind of publicity, with the mouth of word, and Sholay was able to achieve a cult status in the cinema. Diwar itself was a blockbuster which was done by Amitabh. Trishul, the kind of intense role which he did in Trishul. In Shakti he came with Dilip Kumar, and in Kalia he is shown as against the system. And what we see is that in the film Dostana, the kind of comic timing Amitabh portrays was also quite appreciated by the masses. and Satte Pe Satta, both comic and action, in which he played the double role. So what we see is that Amitabh was able to establish himself in 1980s, and he became the superstar with the kind of cinema which he was doing, and that kind of cinema is remembered even now, the kind of blockbusters which he gave one after another, and the kind of acting skills Amitabh Bachchan had, and later also the film which he did called Kabhi Kabhi, in which though he was not the image of a young man but the image of a poet, so he was able to carry through that image. Similarly, like Anand, where he plays the role of a doctor, and that kind of image was also carried by Amitabh. So that kind of cinema which Amitabh did in 1970s and 80s and thereafter was quite appreciated by the audience. What we see is that the films of Amitabh, they were not very successful in 90s. Very less films of Amitabh, they became successful in 90s, and his popularity comparatively dwindled. Because of this, in late 90s, some of the films in which there was a change in the image of Amitabh, that how which we can call the second innings of Amitabh, in the sense that now he redefined himself, now he reinvented himself, and in this reinvented role Amitabh again became quite popular with the masses. There was a film called Mohabbatein, in which he played the role of a disciplinarian. There was a film called Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, in which he acted the role of a patriarch of a family, and then in Bhagwan he played a very intense role, and in Chini Kam he was playing some sort of a bindas role. Pa's role, in which it was a very unique kind of a role, because he had to act like a child who was suffering from a disease, because of which he has grown older in a very young age, and he will die. He has to die soon also. So from that perspective, Amitabh was reinventing himself, and there were two films called Bhootnath and Bhootnath Returns, in which all those kinds of antics with which Amitabh is popular were also shown. So what we see is that in the second innings of Amitabh Bachchan, in those films which were in which he acted, they became quite popular. And there was another film called Piku, which came recently, in which Amitabh Bachchan appears to be quite eccentric, but at the same time the kind of acting skills, the kind of characterization in which Amitabh molded himself into, he went into the character, the kind of polish which came to the character, which have been essayed by Amitabh, is quite exemplary. Another important film personality which I would like to talk about is Hema Malini. Hema Malini was also quite popular. She was a trained dancer. Apart from Sholay, Dharmendra, Hema Malini pair, they came together in a number of films called Sita or Geeta, Dream Girl, Charas, The Burning Train. These were some of the films they acted together. Johnny Mera Naam, Satte Pe Satta, Naseeb, Bhagwan and Babul. So these were some of the important films in which Hema Malini played an important role. But there were so many other films which we will not be able to discuss because of the constraints of time, but Hema Malini indeed was some sort of an important luminary or personality who was associated with Indian cinema, and how when she came to films, how she was able to position herself, and at the same time the kind of roles which she essayed, be it in terms of comic roles, be it in terms of very serious roles, and all the roles which were essayed or which were portrayed, which were depicted by Hema Malini, they became quite popular with the masses. And in the later films like Bhagwan and Babul, she also played a very good supporting role to Amitabh in both the films. Apart from that, I would like to also talk about Rekha, who was another important heroine during this particular period, and her jodi with Amitabh became quite popular in a number of films like Mukaddar Ka Sikandar, Suhag, Mr. Natwar Lal, Silsila. So these were some of the films which became quite popular, in which Rekha acted with Amitabh Bachchan. Then Khoobsurat and Khoon Bhari Maang, these were the two films in which could be seen as Rekha's films, in the context that more or less she is playing some sort of a dominating role in both the films, and both the films are very different kind of cinema. In Khoobsurat she is playing the role of a girl who is very bubbly, and at the same time she is also very responsible, and in Khoon Bhari Maang she is playing a role in which she is taking vengeance from the people, those who have committed violence against her. Before that she had also worked in Umrao Jaan, in which she played the role of a courtesan, and that film is considered to be one of the classical films or the classic films of Indian cinema, and her role is even appreciated even now. Utsav was another film made by Shashi Kapoor, which is quite liked by the audience. So the acting skills of Rekha, along with the styles, elegance, and the kind of innocence which was portrayed by her on the screen was appreciated by the audience. Apart from that, some other film personalities, those who were associated with Indian cinema in the context, that Sivaji Ganesan, who was a great actor, and he also was a Dada Saheb Phalke awardee, and he got the Best Actor award at the Afro-Asian Film Festival, which was held in 1960 at Cairo, Egypt. So what we see is that Sivaji Ganesan, who was a good actor and who was also awarded with the Phalke award, Dada Saheb Phalke award, and he also was he also took the leadership in 1952 of the South Indian Film Artists Association. So what we see is that apart from films, he was also engaged in some kind of organizing activity which was related to cinema, and the kind of work which he did as an actor was quite appreciated. Soumitra Chatterjee was another important hero in Bengal, and Soumitra Chatterjee is quite associated with Satyajit Ray. His film The Aput Sansar, which was part of the Apu trilogy, what we see is that Soumitra Chatterjee played a significant role in the films which were made by Satyajit Ray, and many of them they claimed that he was alter ego of Satyajit Ray, in the sense that the way he essayed the characters, which were in a way conceptualized by Satyajit Ray, was quite dynamic in the context and quite appreciated in the context that in almost all the characters or the major roles which were given by Satyajit Ray to him, he became quite popular because of the characters which were played by him. And some of the films in which he took part was The Apur Sansar, then Charulata, Sonar Kela. He was also awarded the Dada Saheb Phalke award and the National Film Award. So he was able to achieve all these kinds of award because of his acting skills. Another important film personality who was associated was M.G. Ramachandran. M.G. Ramachandran was an actor, he was also a producer as well as a director, and he also founded a political party, All India Anna Dravid Munnetra Kazhagam, AIADMK, and he became the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu as well. He was also given the title of Bharat Ratna. So what we see is that M.G. Ramachandran also played an important role in Indian cinema. Apart from that, another important film personality was N.T. Rama Rao. N.T. Rama Rao was a person who acted in a number of mythological films. He also founded a political party, TDP, in 1982, and he became the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh as well. So some of the film personalities, those who were associated in the South Indian cinema, they later on got associated with the political field as well, and two of the earlier one mentioned by us, they even became the chief ministers of the different states. Another important film personality of southern India was Rajkumar, who was an actor and singer in the Kannada cinema. He also won a number of national film awards, and he also won film award for best playback singer. He was also awarded the Dada Saheb Phalke award. So what we see is that a number of film stars in the Kannada, Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, all these kind of film industries in South India, they were also quite popular with the masses, and at the same time they were being given a number of awards which were associated with the film industry. Now I would like to talk about two music directors, those who formed a team, Shankar Jaikishan. They were the music directors in 1950s and 1960s, and they teamed up with Shailendra and Hasrat Jaipuri, and both these were the lyricists, those who wrote songs on which were composed by Shankar Jaikishan. And Mohammed Rafi and Lata Mangeshkar, who is considered, Lata Mangeshkar and Mohammed Rafi, those who were considered to be the doyens of the kind of music which they generated, the kind of songs which they sung over the years, and the films in which Shankar Jaikishan provided music was Barsat, Awara, Shri 420, Anadi, Mera Naam Joker. These were some of the films of Raj Kapoor in which Shankar Jaikishan they were associated, and they were also given Padam Shri by the government of India, and they also shared 9 Filmfare Awards. 9 Filmfare Awards were given to the kind of music which was given by Shankar Jaikishan. Another important film personality was B.R. Chopra. B.R. Chopra was a filmmaker who was associated with films like Naya Daur, Qanoon, Hamraz, Nikah. These were the films which were directed by B.R. Chopra. He also produced the famous TV series in 1980s with the title of Mahabharat. Mahabharat was produced by him. It became quite popular in 1980s, and a number of films which were produced by B.R. Chopra, and some of them were also directed by his brother Yash Chopra, who became quite popular. And Yash Chopra's cinema, in which Amitabh Bachchan and later Shah Rukh Khan, they acted. And Yash Chopra was known as the king of romance in the context that many of the films which were made by him were also romantic films. And how B.R. Chopra and Yash Chopra, both of them, they contributed to the Indian cinema. And what we see is that B.R. Chopra also wrote film scripts, or the story idea was of Bhagwan and Babul. The stories, they were being written by B.R. Chopra. Two other important music directors were Laxmikant-Pyarelal. And Laxmikant-Pyarelal, they gave music in a film called Dosti, and this film became quite popular, Dosti, in which they gave the kind of music which became quite popular. And lyricists Anand Bakshi and Laxmikant-Pyarelal, they composed songs for more than 250 films, and they had 7 Filmfare Awards which they got. Some of the films in which they gave music were Dosti, Amar Akbar Anthony, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, and Karz. And the music of all these films, it became quite popular, as you can see also on the screen. And these are only some of the references, because they gave music in so many films, and these films are some of the references in which they gave quite a music which became quite popular with the masses. What we see is that apart from this, the kind of facilities which are being there now to make films is also an important aspect, because during that particular period, during the studio era, we had a number of film studios. After that, what we see is that film stars, they became more important, and music directors, directors and film stars, they were being hired by the people, those who had money to make films, and the star system, it predominated. But at the same time, they required space and the studios which were provided so that shootings can take place. In that context, Ramoji Film City, which was established in Hyderabad, it opened in 1996, and it is a huge film studio, and which had a lot of area, and because of this area, what we see is that a number of facilities they are being provided, and because of this providing of facilities, a number of films, they are being shot at these places. During this particular period, what we see is that a lot of middle class cinema could also be seen. By middle class cinema, we mean that the cinema which was catering to the middle classes, which was appreciated by the common man, and you may not find very big stars in this kind of cinema, but this cinema was quite popular in this context that it was making very light kind of films with which people could identify. And some of the films which were made during this particular period were Golmaal, Khoobsurat, Chupke Chupke, Bawarchi, Mili, and all these films they became quite popular with the masses, and Hrishikesh Mukherjee was associated with this kind of cinema. And in this kind of cinema what we see is that though it was trying to give some kind of a message also, when you see Bawarchi, it is giving some kind of message in the context of the harmony in the family. If you see the message in the film called Khoobsurat, that one should be disciplined in the family, but at the same time one should also enjoy in the family. The discipline should not throttle the kind of aspirations, it should not throttle the kind of happiness one could achieve within the family. Mili was some sort of a philosophical film, it was some sort of a take on death. When you compare it with Anand, they appear to be similar kind of films, because both of these films they are tackling with the theme of death. Two important films which were made by Basu Chatterjee were Choti Si Baat and Rajnikant. Both these films they also became quite popular during this period, and Amol Palekar was able to establish himself with the films which were made for the middle classes. In many of the films Amol Palekar played the lead role, and people could also identify with a very boy next door kind of a hero who was playing characters in the various films which were made during this particular period. Another important filmmaker I would like to talk about is Gulzar, who was not only a filmmaker in the context that he directed films, but he was also a lyricist, he was also a poet. Sorry, he is a poet, he is a lyricist, and the kind of work which has been done by Gulzar is very, very significant. Gulzar's original name is Sampuran Singh Kalra, and he is writing with the pen name of Gulzar. And as you can see on the screen as well, that he was awarded the Dada Saheb Phalke Award, and several national awards have been given to Gulzar, and a number of Filmfare awards have also been given to him. And for a film called Guddi, he wrote a song called Humko Man Ki Shakti Dena, and this song Humko Man Ki Shakti Dena has also become some sort of a prayer in many of the schools. So what we see is that the kind of work which has been done by Gulzar, the kind of poetry which he has brought to the films, and the kind of work later which he has done with Vishal Bharadwaj for the films which have been made by Vishal Bharadwaj, and both of them they have done some kind of a wonderful work. Apart from the kind of lyrics which he has written, apart from the screenplay of many films which he wrote, especially Anand also, the dialogues were written by him. He also directed some of the films. For example, Parichay was a film which was directed by him, then Mausam, Andhi and Angur. So these were the films which were directed by Gulzar, and when you see all this kind of cinema which was made by him, they were able to achieve some kind of critical appreciation from the peers, those who were there in the film industry. And at the same time, apart from Gulzar, the kind of work which Gulzar has done, we also see that parallel cinema also became quite popular in 70s and early 80s. By parallel cinema, we see that some of the issues of poverty, issue of daily life struggle, some kind of serious content was there in the film, and they were dealing with the issue of realism. They were keeping an eye on the socio-political climate of the times, and they were rejecting the sequence of dance and song numbers which are very typical of the mainstream commercial cinema. So what we see is that the parallel cinema also became important, and with the influence of the neorealism and the nouvelle vague or the new wave, which is also considered to be the new wave cinema which came in France in late 1950s. So that kind of cinema also influenced the Indian cinema in the context that many of the films they were called the new kind of cinema or the new wave cinema. So this cinema was also considered to be some sort of a parallel cinema or an alternative cinema. it was an alternative to the commercial films which were made by Bombay and other centers which were making all this kind of commercial stuff. And this kind of cinema was keeping an eye on the socio-political reality of the times. So they were trying to project those ideas with which masses could also identify, and they were making films which were not all those song and dance sequences, and song and dance sequences, they were being rejected in this kind of cinema which was made during this particular period. Apart from that, what we see during this particular period is that a lot of debates are also there. When we say that we have the parallel cinema, so it was an alternative cinema in that context, and it is also considered to be some sort of an art cinema in which a lot of artistic work is being done. But nowadays this kind of distinction is getting very blurred, because more and more filmmakers, they are talking about good and bad cinema. They are saying that cinema can be only good or it can be bad. We cannot say that it is art or commercial, because in commercial cinema a lot of art is also involved. So this kind of distinctions which were there during the earlier period, that is getting blurred now in today's times. Some of the important filmmakers, those who were associated with this kind of cinema, for example, Mani Kaul is one. Mani Kaul was associated with this kind of cinema. Then Kumar Shahani was another, who was also associated with this kind of cinema in late 60s and early 70s. And Mani Kaul made a film called Uski Roti and Duvidha, and both these films, they were critically acclaimed and appreciated by the film critics. Kumar Shahani made Maya Darpan and Khayal Gatha. Govind Nihalani made Ardh Satya and Akrosh. And Shyam Benegal made films like Ankur, Nishant and Manthan. So when you talk about this kind of cinema was making those kind of films with which society was concerned. Society was concerned in the sense that all those kind of problems with which the common masses were afflicted, they were being portrayed in this kind of cinema. And this kind of cinema was a cinema which was some sort of a turn away from the commercial constraints which were there in the cinema, which was the commercial cinema, or which was the popular cinema which was made for the masses. And this cinema, though many of the films could not become successful in the context that they were not able to achieve the revenues at the box office, many of them bombed at the box office, they became flops. But at the same time, this kind of cinema brought the masses closer to the reality, and their aim was to make films which were more purposeful and meaningful in nature. So this was one of the important aspects which was associated with this kind of cinema. Similarly, apart from the Hindi cinema which was made in Bombay and other centers, we also see that this kind of cinema was also made in other centers, and many of the filmmakers, those who were from South India, they also got associated with this kind of cinema. For example, take the case of Malayalam cinema, in which we have Adur Gopalakrishnan and his first film Swayamvaram, which was made in 1972, and it extended the new wave cinema to the Malayalam cinema. And then you have Arvindan, and his first film was Uttarayanam, which strengthened the movement. So what we see as that this kind of cinema, it also reached to other parts and it became quite popular. And some of the film personalities, those who were associated with the South or the South Indian cinema, one was Kamal Haasan. Kamal Haasan, the kind of films in which he acted, the kind of films which he made himself, or directed, a number of Filmfare awards, a number of national awards, they were being given to Kamal Haasan. And what we see is that Kamal Haasan he made a film called, he acted in a film called Nayasan with Mani Ratnam. He also acted in a Hindi film called Indian, which was made by Shankar in 1996, and Hey Ram, which was made in 2000, Vishwarupam, which was made in 2013, and Dasavataram, which was made in 2008. So, the kind of films in which Kamal Haasan acted, the kind of cinema in which Kamal Haasan acted was also quite important from the perspective that he was also making some kind of a conscious cinema, and his film called Hey Ram, which was made in 2000, was set against the backdrop of partition of India and the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. And his film called Indian, which was a vigilante film, it was also dealing with the issue of corruption in contemporary times, in which he plays a double role of father and son. So, what we see is that the kind of cinema which was in which Kamal Haasan acted, or the kind of cinema in which he directed, that cinema was also important from the perspective that it was an important cinema. In Kannada cinema, I would like to talk about B.V. Karanth, Girish Karnad and Girish Kasaravalli, who spearheaded the parallel cinema movement in Kannada. And Girish Kasaravalli, he graduated from FTII, and in 1977 he made a film called Ghat Shraddh, which won the national award for the best film. So, what we see is that all these kind of films which were made during this particular period, this kind of cinema was also very much appreciated by the masses as well. And these kind of filmmakers, those who came from film schools, they were trained in the film schools, and they came with a certain approach, and with that approach they were able to produce that kind of cinema which could be preserved for generations to come. Then another important film star who is associated with Indian cinema is Rajnikant, and many of the films in which Rajnikant has acted, larger than life characters could be seen. Rajnikant cinema had larger than life characters, and the kind of uniquely styled dialogues of Rajnikant cinema could also be seen. In many of the later films in which Rajnikant has acted, for example Shivaji and Enthiran, they also became quite popular. And what we see is that the kind of cinema in which Rajnikant has acted, it has able to generate a lot of revenue as well, and many of the films in which Rajnikant has acted, they have become big blockbusters, and not only in South India, but they have been able to capture a lot of they have been able to garner a lot of revenue in North India and across the world. So, Rajnikant became not only a film star, but he became some sort of a phenomena in the Indian film industry, and his films, they have been quite appreciated by the masses. I talked about two films, and he has been referred to as the box office Badshah, in the context that his films, they have done quite well. Another important film personality I would like to talk about is Anil Kapoor. Anil Kapoor also became quite popular in 70s and 80s, and late 70s in some of the films he acted, and 80s and 90s he became quite popular. The kind of cinema which he has done, and some of the films, they were also very critically acclaimed, like Sahib and then Meri Jang, for example, in which he played the central protagonist. He also got a number of Filmfare awards, and for the supporting actor, he got the award in Yash Chopra's Mashal, which was made in 1984. And for the best actor, he got the award in Tezab and Beta. Then he also worked in some of the critically acclaimed films like Wo Saat Din, Meri Jang, Jambaz, Karma, Mr. India, Virasat, and an international film, a Hollywood film called Slumdog Millionaire, in which he acted in 2007, and this film also got the Oscar awards in 2007-8. So, what we see is that Anil Kapoor's work in that context is generally not seen in the annals of the Indian cinema, but the kind of work which he has done over the years, the kind of acting skills which he had over the years, they were being exhibited in the kind of cinema which he has done. And his cinema was a very popular kind of cinema, the kind of audience which he had, the kind of acting skills, the kind of youthful looks which he has been able to manage, they have been quite appreciated by the audience in India. What also we see during this particular period is that a number of other film personalities, those who were associated, for example, Jackie Shroff, who also acted along with Anil Kapoor during this particular period in some of the films like Ram Lakhan, and in Khalnayak he acted with Sanjay Dutt. So these kind of film stars, they have also contributed, all the personalities, those who have been associated with these kind of cinema have also contributed to the Indian cinema. Then in 1990s what we see is the age of globalization. Age of globalization, when we talk about, we see that in 1991 a number of changes they came in the film industry, and these kind of changes they became important in the context that this cinema was trying to go into a lot of experimentation. This kind of cinema was trying to foray into a number of ways with which the Indian industry was not associated earlier. And these kind of films, they were more experimental in nature, they were more theme based in the context that for example, when you see all the films which have been given on the screen, for example, Tare Zameen Par, Dil Chahta Hai, Kahani, they all have different themes, and the treatment of the films in this kind of cinema is also very different in the context that these films, they became quite important. And when you talk about the reasons for change in 1991 is the reason of globalization which came in 1991. The economy was liberalized in 1991, a lot of the government of India, it liberalized the economy, a number of bottlenecks which were associated with the industry, they were being removed, and a lot of privatization, it took place. And at the same time what we see is a lot of changing social and cultural values during this particular period, and more participation of women in public life, and at the same time changes in the mindset of people. So all these kind of changes they were coming into the cinema of this time, because this all these kind of changes which are coming in 1991 because of globalization, when more and more industries they were being and more companies they came to India, and a number of Indians they also got engaged in working in these multinational companies. They became aware about the work culture of these kind of multinational companies. When a lot of privatization of the industries it took place, the economy got privatized, more and more avenues for the people they got opened up. And at the same time what we see is that a lot of technical and the technological developments they were also taking place in 1990s. Because of the coming of the liberalization and globalization, many of the foreign technicians they also got associated with the Indian film industry, and in many of the films we see that the foreign film technicians they were being employed in late 90s and in the first decade of the 21st century. They were as a result of the kind of changes which came during this particular period, and at the same time some kind of changes in the values and the culture of masses also came, because the masses they became more receptive to these kind of ideas, because these ideas could not become successful if the masses they do not become receptive. So masses became receptive, they went into more and more experimentation in the context of business which they were doing, the kind of opportunities which were being provided by the government, they were ready to explore those kind of opportunities, and with that kind of exploration they became successful also. What we also see is that more and more women they were also participating in the context that more women engineers, more women going into IIMs etc. Could be seen during this particular period. And when more women, they went into industry not only as heroines but in the production as well. So when they worked in the production departments of the various films, they also acted as some sort of a PR consultant to a number of film stars. So their participation in all these kind of diversified activities led to some kind of changes which came within the film industry. And at the same time, what we see is that a lot of change with regard to the mindset of the people could also be seen. That people, they were ready to accept all this kind of new cinema which came with new themes. And at the same time, what we also see is that the arrival of the multiplexes during this particular period, that smaller films with less kind of a budget could also be made, and because these could be exhibited in the multiplexes which had small screens. So this kind of cinema, which was catering to the kind of audience which was very limited in number, to an audience which wanted to see a particular kind of cinema, were also being made during this particular period, because of which we see new filmmakers like Diwakar Banerjee, Anurag Kashyap, all this kind of cinema which was made, which we will talk about in the next episode of this 100 years of Indian cinema. Till then, have a very good time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much once again, giving a very productive session to our students. I hope that all the students might have liked this lecture, you might have watched this lecture, or you might be watching with the help of YouTube. Dear friends, if you have any queries, then you can mail us at info.cc@nic.in. We would be meeting again and would be discussing more on the 100 years of Indian cinema. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.